Have you ever been looked down on by the person you loved, just because you hadn't made it yet? Marcus Reed did, a construction worker, covered in dust. Dumped by his girlfriend of 5 years right in front of everyone, she chose a rich man instead. What she didn't know was that the man she walked away from secretly controlled one of the most powerful banks in America. So tell me, if you were him, would you speak up or stay silent? By the time the sun dropped behind the half-built skyline, Marcus Reed was already exhausted, not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, the kind that sits in your bones, the kind that follows you home. He stepped down from the scaffolding slowly, careful, measured. His boots hit the ground with a dull thud. Dust rose around him like it knew his name. His shirt was soaked. His hands were rough, cracked in places, small cuts he didn't even remember getting. Nobody noticed him. And honestly, he preferred it that way. Marcus grabbed his worn-out backpack from the corner, zipped it halfway, didn't bother checking inside. There wasn't much to check anyway. A water bottle, a pair of gloves, a folded receipt from a grocery store 2 weeks ago. He walked past the other workers. Some were laughing, some were complaining, some were already on their phones. Marcus just nodded once when someone called his name. "See you tomorrow, man. Yeah, tomorrow, same routine, same answer, every day." The bus ride home took 40 minutes, 40 quiet minutes. He sat near the back, head slightly down, not sleeping, just thinking, or maybe trying not to think. When he got off, the streetlights were already on. His apartment building stood there like it had given up a long time ago. Faded paint, flickering lights, the kind of place people passed without looking twice. Marcus climbed the stairs, 3rd floor, no elevator, never fixed, inside. The room was small. 1 bed, 1 table, a chair that leaned slightly to the left. The air smelled faintly of detergent and old wood. He dropped his bag by the door, sat down, and just stayed there for a second. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small stack of cash. Not thick, not impressive, but it mattered. He spread the bills on the table carefully, like they were something fragile. Counted once, then again, then one more time. Rent, utilities, food, and a separate envelope. That one he didn't open right away. He just stared at it, his name written in simple handwriting. No decoration, no emotion, just Marcus. After a moment, he finally opened it. Inside, more bills, smaller ones. Savings, not for himself, for a future he wasn't even sure would stay. He exhaled slowly. "Almost there," he murmured. But even he didn't sound convinced. Dinner was simple. Always simple. He opened the fridge, took out a sandwich wrapped in foil, cold, made the night before, bread slightly dry at the edges. He didn't care. He sat on the bed, took a bite, chewed slowly. No TV, no music, just the sound of him eating. Halfway through, he paused, looked down at the sandwich, then smiled, just a little. Not because it was good, because it was enough. That had always been his way. Enough was enough. After dinner, he checked his phone, a few notifications, mostly work-related. A missed call from an unknown number. He ignored it. Then he saw her name. Emily. No message, just her name sitting there from an earlier call. His thumb hovered over the screen. He didn't call back, not yet. Instead, he leaned back against the wall, closed his eyes, and for a moment, everything quieted. But not completely, because deep down, there was always that one thought, the one he never said out loud, the one about his father. Marcus didn't hate him, not exactly, but he didn't forgive him either. 5 years ago, when his mother passed, he had called, again and again. No answer, no message, nothing. Just silence. And something inside Marcus changed that day. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, permanently. Since then, he made a decision. No shortcuts, no inheritance, no help. If he was going to build a life, he would build it himself, brick by brick. Just like the buildings he worked on. Some people called it pride, some called it stubbornness. Marcus called it peace, because at least this way, no one could take it from him. He stood up, walked to the sink, washed his hands slowly, watched the dirt swirl down the drain. Then he looked at himself in the small mirror above it. Tired eyes, strong jaw, a face that didn't complain, just a little more, he said quietly. He wasn't talking about money. He was talking about time. Time until things changed. Time until he could finally stand in front of the world and not feel like he had to prove anything. But life doesn't always wait for you to be ready. And somewhere else, at that exact same moment, Emily was already making a choice that would change everything. And Marcus had no idea yet that the life he was trying so hard to build was about to be tested in a way he never expected. Marcus didn't meet Emily Carter in some dramatic way. No music, no spotlight, no perfect timing. It was simple, quiet, real. They met at a small grocery store almost 5 years ago. Emily was standing at the counter, holding up a line, arguing politely with the cashier about a coupon that refused to scan. Marcus stood behind her, tired from work, dust still clinging to his clothes, his boots leaving faint marks on the floor. He didn't say much. He never did. When the cashier finally sighed and shook her head, Marcus just stepped forward, placed a few dollars on the counter and said, "It's fine, I got it." Then he walked away before Emily could react, but she followed him. That was the beginning. Back then, everything felt easy. Emily didn't care about what Marcus did for a living, or at least, she said she didn't. She liked how calm he was, how steady, how he didn't talk just to fill silence, how he listened. Really listened. And Marcus, he liked her energy, her laughter, the way she could turn a quiet moment into something warm without even trying. They started seeing each other more. Small dates, cheap dinners, walks after sunset, sitting on benches, talking about nothing and everything. No pressure, no expectations, just two people figuring things out. Marcus never lied about his life. He didn't pretend to be more than he was. He told her early, "I work construction. It's not glamorous, but it's honest." Emily smiled and said, "That's enough." And for a while it was. They built something simple, something real. Marcus showed up every time. He remembered small things, fixed things in her apartment, helped her when she needed it, listened when she was stressed. He didn't have much money, but he gave what he had, time, effort, care, to him. That was love. Years passed, slowly, quietly. But life outside their small world didn't stand still. Emily's circle began to change. Her friends started moving forward, new jobs, better salaries, engagements, vacations in places Marcus had only seen in pictures. At first, she shared those stories with excitement. Then, without noticing it herself, she started comparing. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. It came in small sentences. "My friend just got engaged. Her ring was unbelievable." Marcus would nod, smile slightly. "That's good for her," he'd say, and that would be it. But the comments didn't stop. They grew, became more frequent, more pointed. "Do you ever think about doing something else?" Emily asked one night, sitting on his bed, scrolling through her phone. "Construction is hard. I mean, long term." Marcus looked at her, thought carefully. "It's what I know, and it pays the bills," he said. He wasn't defensive, just honest. That used to be enough. But now it wasn't landing the same way. Emily didn't argue directly. She wasn't cruel. Not yet. But her tone changed. Subtle. Almost invisible. Questions about the future started appearing more often. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" she asked. Marcus didn't rush answers like that. He didn't believe in promising things he couldn't guarantee. "I'm working toward something stable," he said. "It takes time." Emily nodded, but her silence afterward said more than her words. Marcus felt it, not clearly, but enough. Enough to know something was shifting. So he did what he always did. He worked harder, took extra shifts, stayed longer on site, lifted heavier loads, came home later, ate less, slept less, saved more. Every dollar had a purpose now, not just survival, a future, a ring, a life he believed he could give her if he just kept going. One evening, he showed her the small envelope where he kept his savings. "It's not much yet," he said, but it's growing. Emily looked at it, then at him, forced a small smile. Yeah, that's good. But her eyes didn't match her words. Marcus noticed, of course he did. He just chose not to push. Because to him, love wasn't about pressure. It was about consistency. Showing up, again and again. But Emily's world was speeding up. Her friends weren't waiting anymore. They were moving, building, upgrading their lives, and without realizing it, she started feeling left behind. Not because Marcus wasn't trying, but because his pace didn't match the world she was watching. One night, they sat together in silence. No TV, no distractions, just the hum of the city outside. Marcus finally spoke. I'm close, he said quietly. Emily turned to him. Close to what? She asked. To being ready, he replied. He didn't say marriage. He didn't have to. It was there, in the way he said it, in the way he looked at her. Emily held his gaze for a second, then looked away. Marcus, she started. But she didn't finish. Instead, she just nodded slowly. Okay. That moment stayed with him, not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. Something inside him tightened. Not fear. Not yet. Just a quiet awareness, like standing on ground that no longer felt completely solid. Still, he believed in them. 5 years wasn't something you threw away easily, not to him. He kept working, kept saving, kept showing up, because in his mind, this was just a phase, just pressure, just time testing them. What he didn't see was that Emily had already started measuring love differently. Not by effort, not by loyalty, but by outcomes, by results, by how fast things were moving. And in her world, Marcus was starting to fall behind. And while he was still building something real, brick by brick, she was quietly stepping into a different life, one that didn't include waiting anymore. And that choice, once made, would soon come crashing into Marcus in a way he could no longer ignore. Marcus first met Emily's parents on a Sunday afternoon. Nothing dramatic, just a simple visit, a small house in a quiet neighborhood, clean, organized, the kind of place that told you everything about the people living inside it before they even spoke. He remembered standing at the door, holding a small box of pastries, not expensive, just something respectful. Emily opened the door with a smile, warm but slightly tense. They're inside, she said softly. Marcus nodded, took a breath, stepped in. Her mother was the first to look at him. A quick glance, then another. Measuring, not rude, not welcoming either, just assessing. Her father stood up slowly from his chair. Marcus, he said. Firm handshake, strong grip, eyes that didn't blink much. Sir, Marcus replied. Calm, respectful, he always knew how to carry himself. They sat down, small talk at first, work, weather, life, the usual. Marcus answered honestly. He didn't exaggerate, didn't decorate his life, construction, long hours, steady income. That was it. He could feel it, the shift. Not loud, not obvious, but real. The moment they understood exactly where he stood. Something in the room cooled. Her mother leaned back slightly, crossed her arms. Construction, she repeated. Marcus nodded. Yes, ma'am. Silence for a second. Then a small smile. Not kind, not cruel, just polite enough to hide what she was thinking. That must be physically demanding, she said. Marcus nodded again. It is. He didn't defend it, didn't justify it. He never felt ashamed of honest work. But he wasn't blind either. He knew what they were hearing. Not stability, not future, just limitation. The conversation moved on, but the tone had already changed. Subtle questions started coming. Do you have plans to move up? Her father asked. Marcus thought for a second. I'm working towards something better, he said. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't detailed enough for them. Her mother exchanged a glance with her father, quick, almost invisible. But Marcus saw it. Of course he did. He noticed everything. They didn't insult him directly. They were too careful for that, too polite. But the meaning was there, in the pauses, in the way they redirected conversations, in the questions they didn't ask. and in the ones they did. Emily deserves someone who can provide, her mother said later, while Emily was in the kitchen. The sentence floated in the air like it had been rehearsed. Marcus didn't react immediately. He just nodded slightly. I understand, he said. And he meant it, more than they knew. Because Marcus wasn't trying to impress them. He was trying to build something real, something that would speak for itself one day. But for them, one day wasn't enough. They wanted now. Proof, security, guarantees, things Marcus couldn't give, not yet. When they left that day, Emily was quiet. Too quiet, Marcus noticed. They're just protective, she said finally, walking beside him. Marcus gave a small nod. I get it, he replied. And he did. But understanding something doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. After that visit, things changed slowly again. It always started slowly. Emily began bringing it up more often. Not directly at first, just small reminders. My parents asked about you, she said one evening. Marcus looked up. What did you tell them? That you're trying, she replied. The word stayed in the air longer than it should have. Trying, not succeeding, not building, just trying. Marcus didn't argue. He never liked turning conversations into fights. Instead, he adjusted, worked more, saved more, focused harder, because deep down, he knew what this was about. Not just Emily, not just her parents. It was about something bigger. The pressure every man feels at some point. To prove he can stand. To prove he can carry more than just himself. To become enough. One night, Emily sat across from him, her expression serious. Marcus, she said, we've been together 5 years. He nodded. He knew where this was going. I need to know where this is going, she continued. Marcus leaned forward slightly, rested his elbows on his knees, thought carefully. I'm working toward it, he said. Toward what? She asked. Toward being ready, he replied. She exhaled slowly. Ready when that question didn't have an easy answer. And for the first time, Marcus didn't have something simple to say. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much to lie. Soon, he said quietly. Emily looked at him, searching, measuring. Soon isn't a plan, she replied. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Marcus felt it. Not as anger, as pressure, real pressure, the kind that sits on your chest and doesn't move. He didn't argue. He just nodded once. Because in his mind, this wasn't about winning an argument. It was about proving something through action, through time, through consistency. But time was exactly what Emily felt she was running out of. And while Marcus was still building slowly, carefully, brick by brick, Emily was starting to look at the world around her and wonder if she had chosen the wrong foundation altogether. And that question, once it takes root, doesn't go away quietly. It happened on a day that felt like every other day. No warning, no sign. Marcus had just finished a long shift. His body was heavy, his shirt stuck to his skin. Dust covered his arms like it belonged there. He stepped off the site slowly, stretching his back, trying to shake off the weight of the day. His stomach growled quietly. He hadn't eaten since morning. Not because he forgot, because he chose not to. Saving mattered more. Every dollar had a purpose. He walked toward the street, pulling his phone out to check the time. 6:42 p.m. Still enough time to get home, eat something small, maybe rest a little before the next day started all over again. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong there. Smooth, low, expensive, not loud, but noticeable. The kind of sound people instinctively turn toward. A black car pulled up slowly beside him. Clean, polished, out of place in a street filled with work trucks and worn-out sedans. Marcus didn't move at first. He thought maybe it was lost or waiting for someone else. But then the door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed, late 50s. Everything about him spoke of control. Not just money control, but his face. His face didn't match the image. His eyes were tired, heavy, like someone carrying something for too long. He looked at Marcus, not casually, not by mistake, directly. "Marcus," the man said. His voice wasn't loud, but it landed. Marcus froze, not because of fear, because of recognition. A recognition he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "It's been a long time," the man added. Marcus didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. His hands stayed at his sides. Then he spoke. Calm. Flat. "What are you doing here?" The man took a step closer. Careful, like he didn't want to push too far. "I've been looking for you," he said. Marcus let out a short breath, not a laugh. "Something colder now?" he asked. "After all this time, now you're looking for me." The man didn't defend himself right away. He nodded once. Slow, accepting the weight of the question. "I deserve that," he said quietly. Marcus looked away for a second, toward the road, toward anything that wasn't standing in front of him. Memories came back faster than he wanted, calls unanswered, silence when it mattered most, absence that couldn't be explained away. He turned back. "You had 5 years," Marcus said. 5 years to look." The man's expression tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Marcus stepped forward slightly, not aggressive, just closer. "My mother died," he continued. "I called you over and over again. Nothing." His voice didn't rise. That made it worse. "Do you know what that does to someone?" The man lowered his head for a moment, then looked back up. His eyes were wet now, not dramatic, just real. "I was wrong," he said. "No excuses, no long explanation, just that." Marcus shook his head slowly. "That's not something you fix with a sentence," he replied. Silence stretched between them, heavy, uncomfortable. Then the man straightened slightly, as if he had decided something. "You deserve to know who I am," he said. Marcus frowned slightly. "I already know who you are," he replied. "You're my father." The man nodded. "Yes," he said. "But that's not all." He gestured towards the car behind him, then back to himself. "My name is William Reed," he said. "I'm the chairman of Reed Financial Group." Marcus didn't react immediately, not because he didn't understand, because he did. He just didn't care. "One of the largest banking institutions in the country," William continued. His voice was steady now, controlled. "Everything you've heard about it, it's mine." Marcus stared at him. Not impressed, not shocked, just distant, and he asked. William took another breath. "And it's yours too," he said. "Everything I built, it belongs to you." For a moment, the world felt quiet, not in a peaceful way, in a strange, suspended way, like time had paused to see what Marcus would do next. Marcus looked at the car, then back at the man in front of him. "You think this changes something?" he asked. William hesitated, just slightly. "It can," he said, "if you let it." Marcus let out a breath, slow, controlled. Then he shook his head. "No," he said. "One word, clear, final." William's eyes widened slightly. "Marcus, no," Marcus repeated, his voice still calm, but firm now. "You don't get to disappear when it matters, and come back with money like it fixes everything." William's shoulders dropped. "I'm not trying to fix it with money," he said. Marcus met his eyes. "That's exactly what you're doing," he replied. Silence again, this time heavier. William reached into his pocket, pulled out a card. Dark, minimal, expensive without trying to be. He held it out. "Take it," he said. "Not as a solution, just as protection, as a start." Marcus looked at the card, then at him. For a second, something inside him shifted. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, just conflict. But then he remembered, the calls, the silence, the absence. He stepped back. "I don't need it," he said. William didn't move. "You don't have to struggle like this," he insisted quietly. Marcus's expression hardened just slightly. "This is my life," he said. "I chose it." William swallowed, his voice softer now. "And I chose wrong," he admitted. That landed. Not loudly, but deeply. Marcus didn't respond. Because some truths don't need answers. They just sit there, between two people who both understand them too late. After a moment, Marcus turned, picked up his bag. "Don't come to my job again," he said without looking back. "Don't show up like this." William nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. Marcus paused for half a second, then added, "If you really want to fix something, leave me alone." And with that, he walked away. No drama, no shouting, just distance. The car stayed there for a moment. Then the door closed softly, and it drove off. But something had changed. Not outside, inside, because even if Marcus refused the life his father offered, that life had already found him. And now, the question wasn't whether it existed. The question was how long he could keep it separate from the life he was trying to build, especially when everything else around him was already starting to fall apart. Marcus didn't go home right away that night. He walked, no direction, no plan, just movement. His boots hit the pavement slowly, each step heavier than the last. Not because his body was tired, but because his mind wouldn't settle. The streetlights flickered above him, stretching his shadow long across the ground, like something was following him that he couldn't shake off. His father's voice replayed in his head, calm, controlled, heavy with regret. "Everything I built, it's yours." Marcus let out a quiet breath. Not frustration, not anger. Something deeper, something harder to explain. He stopped at a corner, leaned against a metal railing, closed his eyes for a second, just a second. But it was enough because the memories didn't come back slowly. They hit all at once. The hospital room, his mother's weak voice, the silence on the other end of the phone, calls that never got answered. A boy standing there, not knowing what to do, trying to be strong when he wasn't ready to be. And now, years later, that same silence was being filled with something else. Money, power, opportunity, everything people spend their lives chasing. Marcus opened his eyes, looked at his hands. Rough, worn, real. He had built something. Not big, not impressive to the world. But it was his. Every dollar, every step, every sacrifice. And that mattered more than anyone understood. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, then it buzzed again. Same number, unknown. He knew who it was. He didn't answer. Instead, he pushed himself off the railing and kept walking. Because if he stopped, if he thought too long, he might start questioning himself. And that was something he couldn't afford right now. When he finally got back to his apartment, the room felt different. Smaller somehow. Or maybe it was just him. He dropped his bag, sat down, then stood up again. Restless, he reached for the envelope on the table, opened it, counted the money again. Same number, same reality. He stared at it for a long time. Then slowly, he placed it back. Because for the first time, that money didn't feel like progress. It felt like a test. And he wasn't sure what he was being tested on. There was a knock on the door. Marcus froze, not out of fear, just surprise. Nobody came here, not without calling first. The knock came again. Calm, measured. Marcus walked to the door slowly, opened it halfway. William Reed stood there. Same suit, same calm presence. But this time, no distance, no car, just him. "I told you not to come here?" Marcus said quietly. William nodded once. "I know," he replied. "This isn't about changing your mind." Marcus didn't move, didn't invite him in, just stood there, waiting. William held out the same card again. "Take it," he said. "Not for me, for you." Marcus looked at it, didn't touch it. "You don't understand," Marcus said, his voice still calm, but sharper now. "This isn't about money." William's expression softened slightly. "Then help me understand," he said. That made Marcus pause, not because he didn't have an answer, because he had too many. He stepped back slightly, not to let William in, just to create space to speak. "You think I struggled because I had no choice," Marcus said. "But I did have a choice." He pointed at the card. "I could have found you, used your name, taken shortcuts. I didn't." William listened. Quiet, no interruption. Marcus continued, "Because I needed to know. If I could stand on my own. His voice dropped slightly, not weak, just real. If I could build something without anyone handing it to me. William took that in slowly, then asked, "And have you—" Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked around the room. The small space, the worn furniture, the life he had built piece by piece. "I'm trying," he said finally. William nodded. "You don't have to prove anything anymore," he said. Marcus met his eyes. "That's where you're wrong," he replied. "I'm not proving anything to the world." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm proving it to myself." That landed, harder than anything else. William's grip on the card loosened slightly. Not defeated, just understanding more than before. "I can't undo what I did," William said. "But I can still be here." Marcus shook his head slowly. Being here now doesn't erase not being there then. Silence, long, heavy. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was honest. William lowered his hand, put the card back in his pocket. "Then I'll wait," he said. Marcus frowned slightly. "For what? For the day you don't see me as a problem to solve?" William replied. Marcus didn't respond. Because he didn't have one. "Not yet," William stepped back. "Take care of yourself," he said. "Simple? No pressure?" Then he turned and walked away. No argument, no insistence, just leaving. Marcus stood at the door for a while after that, not moving, not thinking clearly, just standing there, because something had shifted. Not outside, inside. The offer was still there. The power, the wealth, the life he had rejected. And for the first time, it didn't feel distant anymore. It felt close, too close, close enough to change everything, if he let it. Marcus closed the door slowly, leaned his head against it for a second, then whispered to himself, almost like a promise. Not like this, because whatever life he was going to live, whatever future he was going to build, it had to be real. It had to be his, and that decision, as strong as it was about to be tested in a way he never saw coming. Especially when the one person he had been doing all of this for was already preparing to walk away. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, one arm under his head, the other resting across his chest, feeling the slow rhythm of his own breathing, as if it might calm the noise inside him. But it didn't, because every time he closed his eyes, the same question came back. Quiet, but sharp. Like something waiting patiently for an answer he kept avoiding. Should he tell her? Should he tell Emily the truth? He turned his head slightly, looking toward the small table where the envelope still sat. The one filled with money he had earned the hard way, hour by hour, cut by cut, sweat by sweat. And for the first time, that envelope didn't feel like progress anymore. It felt like a line between two lives. One he had built with his own hands, and one that had been waiting for him all along without him asking for it. He sat up slowly, ran a hand over his face, and let out a long breath. Because this wasn't just about money. It wasn't even really about his father. It was about something deeper, something more uncomfortable, something he didn't want to admit even to himself. Because if he told Emily the truth, if he told her who he really was, what he had access to, what he could become overnight, then everything would change, and he wouldn't know what part of her reaction was real anymore. He stood up and walked to the window, pulling the curtain slightly aside, looking out at the quiet street below, a couple of cars passing. Nothing special, nothing dramatic, just ordinary life moving forward. And he wondered if that was what he was about to lose, that simple, ordinary space where love didn't need proof beyond presence. "Does she love me?" he whispered under his breath, then paused, correcting himself quietly. "Or does she love the life she thinks I can give her?" That question didn't feel dramatic, it felt real, and that was what made it heavier, because there was no easy answer waiting at the end of it. For 5 years, he had given her everything he could. Not in big gestures, not in expensive gifts, but in consistency, in showing up, in choosing her every single day, even when he was tired, even when he had nothing extra to give, and he believed that meant something. He believed that counted for something. But lately, the way she looked at him, the way she paused before answering, the way she asked questions that didn't have simple answers, it all pointed to something else, something he didn't want to name yet. He opened his eyes again and stepped back, straightening his shoulders slightly, not out of confidence, but out of habit, because no matter what was happening inside him, he had always carried himself the same way, steady, controlled, not easily shaken, even when things were shifting underneath him. He walked back to this table and picked up his phone, staring at her name for a few seconds. Emily, still there, still familiar, still important, and his thumb hovered over the call button. But he didn't press it, not yet, because once he did, there would be no going back to not knowing. He set the phone down again and let out another breath, slower this time, more deliberate, like he was trying to give himself space to think clearly. If he told her, everything could become easier, faster, cleaner. Her parents would stop questioning him, the pressure would disappear, the timeline would suddenly make sense to everyone, and he could give her the future she had been asking about without hesitation, without delay. But at what cost? That was the part he couldn't ignore, because if she stayed after that, if she looked at him differently, spoke differently, chose him more easily, would it be because of him or because of what came with him? He sat down again, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped, staring at the floor as if the answer might be there if he looked long enough. "I need to know," he said quietly. Not to anyone, just to himself. And that was the truth of it, not pride, not stubbornness, just a need to understand what was real before everything got complicated. He reached for his phone again, this time without hesitation, and pressed the call button, holding it to his ear as the line rang. Once, twice, 3 times, each ring stretching the moment just a little longer, giving him one last chance to change his mind. But he didn't. He stayed there, listening, waiting. Because whatever came next, he needed to face it as himself, not as the man his father said he could become. When Emily finally picked up, her voice sounded normal, light even, like nothing had changed, like everything was still the same. And for a brief second, Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain, not yet, just a quiet awareness that sometimes, the moment before everything changes feels exactly like any other moment, and that was what made it dangerous. "Hey," she said. Marcus paused for a fraction of a second, then replied, "Hey, we need to talk." And even as the words left his mouth, he knew that this conversation wasn't just about explaining something. It was about discovering something, something that had been there all along, waiting beneath the surface. And whatever he found on the other side of that truth would decide everything that came next. Marcus arrived 10 minutes early. He always did. It wasn't about punctuality. It was about respect. If something mattered to him, he showed it in small ways. He stood across the street from the cafe where Emily had asked to meet. A familiar place. They had been there dozens of times. Cheap coffee, quiet corners, conversations that once felt easy. He adjusted his jacket slightly, though it didn't matter. It was clean, that was enough. He glanced through the glass window. People inside, talking, laughing, living their own lives. Normal, simple. Then his eyes stopped. Not because he was looking for something, but because something found him first. Emily was there, sitting at a table near the window. But she wasn't alone. Marcus didn't move. Not immediately. His body stayed still. But something inside him shifted. Quiet. Sharp. He leaned slightly to the side, just enough to see clearly. The man across from her was well-dressed, clean, confident. The kind of confidence that comes from never having to question where you stand. He was leaning back in his chair, speaking casually, smiling like the room belonged to him. Emily laughed. Not the soft laugh Marcus knew. Something lighter, freer, unburdened. Marcus felt it, not as jealousy, not yet, as distance. He stepped back from the window slowly. His first instinct wasn't anger. It was clarity. The kind that arrives before emotions catch up. His phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "I'm here. Where are you?" Marcus stared at the screen for a second, then looked back at the cafe. She was still there. Still laughing. Still leaning slightly toward the man across from her. He typed one word, outside. He hit send. Waited. Through the glass, he saw her phone light up. She looked down, read the message. Then, her smile faded. Just slightly, she said something to the man. He nodded. Leaned back again, relaxed, like he wasn't going anywhere. Emily stood up, straightened her coat, and walked toward the door. Marcus didn't move. He stood there, hands at his sides. Calm. Still. The door opened. A soft bell sound followed. Emily stepped out. Her eyes found him immediately. For a second, neither of them spoke. "You're early," she said, her voice normal, controlled. Marcus nodded once. Yeah, silence, short, tight. Then he asked, "Who is he?" No accusation, no anger, just a question. Emily glanced back toward the cafe window, then back at Marcus. "His name is Daniel," she said. Simple, direct. Marcus waited. Not pushing, just waiting. Emily took a small breath. "He's someone I've been talking to," she added. The words landed, not loud, but heavy. Marcus nodded again. "Slow talking," he repeated. Not mocking, just making sure he understood. Emily crossed her arms slightly. Not defensive, protective. "Marcus, I was going to tell you," she said. He looked at her. "When?" he asked. That question she didn't answer right away. And that silence said more than anything else could have. Marcus looked past her for a second. Through the glass. Daniel was still sitting there. Watching. Not pretending not to notice, just observing. Calm. Confident. Like he already knew how this would end. Marcus turned back. 5 years, he said quietly. Emily's eyes flickered slightly. "I know," she replied. "Do you?" Marcus asked, still calm, still steady, because it doesn't feel like you do. Emily's jaw tightened just a little. "This isn't about that," she said. Marcus shook his head once. "Then what is it about?" he asked. And this time she answered, not slowly, not carefully, just honestly. "It's about my future," she said. There it was, clear, clean, uncomfortable. Marcus didn't react immediately. He just looked at her, really looked at her, as if he was trying to understand something he had been missing all along. "And I'm not part of that?" he asked. Emily hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. "Not like this," she said. That hurt. Not because of how loud it was, but because of how quiet it wasn't. Marcus let out a slow breath. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, but inside, something was closing. Not breaking. Closing. "So that's it?" he asked. Emily looked at him, and for a moment something like guilt passed through her eyes, but it didn't stay. "Marcus, I waited," she said. "I really did. But I can't keep waiting for something that might not happen." Marcus nodded. He understood the words. He just didn't agree with what they meant. "I was building something," he said. "For us." Emily shook her head slightly, shook her head. "You were building something for you," she replied. "I needed something now. That was the difference. Simple. Final." Marcus looked down for a second, then back up. His expression didn't change much, still calm, still controlled. But his eyes were different now. Not hurt, not angry, just clear. "Does he make you feel secure?" Marcus asked. Emily didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," she said. Marcus nodded once. Good, he replied. That caught her off guard. Just slightly. That's it, she asked. Marcus looked at her. What do you want me to say? He replied. She didn't answer, because maybe there was nothing left to say. Behind her, the cafe door opened again. Daniel stepped out, smooth, confident, hands in his coat pockets. He looked at Marcus briefly, then at Emily. Everything okay? He asked. Emily nodded. Yeah, she said softly. Daniel turned his attention back to Marcus. A small smile. Not friendly, not hostile, just certain. I'll take care of her, he said. Marcus met his eyes. Not intimidated, not impressed. Just neutral. You don't have to, Marcus replied. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. Seems like I do, he said. Marcus didn't respond to that. He just looked at Emily one last time, not with anger, not with regret, just acknowledgement. 5 years. Reduced to a moment? Take care of yourself, he said quietly. Then he turned and walked away. No scene, no shouting, no begging, just leaving. Because some things don't need noise to be final. Behind him, Emily didn't call his name. And that told him everything he needed to know. As Marcus walked down the street, his steps were steady, not rushed, not slow, just forward. But inside, something had shifted completely. Not broken. Not yet. Just changed. Because now the question wasn't whether Emily loved him. That answer had already been given. The real question was what he was going to do next, now that the one person he had been building his life around had chosen a different path entirely. Marcus had taken only a few steps away when he heard Emily's voice again, not calling him back, not asking him to stay, just talking, laughing. And that was what made him stop. Not because he wanted to go back, but because something inside him refused to leave unfinished. He turned slightly, not fully, just enough to see. Daniel had already stepped closer to Emily. His hand rested lightly on her back. Casual, familiar, like he belonged there. Marcus watched for 1 second too long. Then he told himself to keep walking. But before he could take another step, Daniel spoke again, louder this time. Hey, he called out. Marcus didn't respond. Hey, man, Daniel repeated. Stepping forward slightly, Marcus stopped. Not out of respect, out of control. He turned back slowly. Daniel looked at him with a half smile. Not friendly, not aggressive, just dismissive. You're Marcus, right? Daniel said. Marcus nodded once. Yeah. Daniel glanced at Emily briefly, then back at Marcus. Look, I don't want this to be awkward, he said. That sentence alone made something in Marcus tighten. Not anger, awareness. But I think it's better if we're clear. Marcus didn't speak. He just stood there listening. Because sometimes silence says more than interruption. Daniel continued. Emily's already made her decision. He said it calmly, like a statement of fact, like something that didn't need discussion. Marcus nodded slightly. I heard her, he replied. His voice was steady. That seemed to irritate Daniel just a little. Not enough to show openly, but enough to shift his tone. Good, Daniel said. Then he looked Marcus up and down. Slow, deliberate. Because honestly, I don't think you could give her what she needs anyway. There it was, direct, no filter. Emily shifted slightly beside him. Daniel, she started, but she didn't stop him. Marcus noticed that of course he did. He looked at Daniel, not defensive, not offended, just present. And what does she need? Marcus asked. Daniel let out a small breath, almost like a laugh. Stability, he said. Security, a real future. He paused for a second, then added, Not this. His eyes moved briefly over Marcus's clothes. The worn jacket, the work boots, the quiet life written all over him. Marcus felt the weight of that look. Not because it was new, but because it was public, visible, out loud, Emily looked down, not meeting Marcus's eyes. That hurt more than anything Daniel said. Marcus took a small step forward, not aggressive, just closer. "You think money is a future?" Marcus said. Daniel shrugged lightly. "Money builds futures," he replied. Marcus nodded slowly. "And character keeps them," he said. That landed, not loudly, but enough. Daniel's smile faded slightly. "Look," he said, his tone sharpening. "You can say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're still standing here with nothing." That word hung in the air. Nothing. Marcus heard it clearly. So did the people nearby, because now, others were starting to notice. A couple at the next table. A man standing by the door. Small looks, quick glances, that was how it started. Attention. Marcus could feel it building. He could walk away. He knew that. He could leave right now and keep his dignity untouched. But something in him stayed. Not pride, not ego, just truth. "I don't have nothing," Marcus said quietly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Really?" he replied. Then he stepped closer. Close enough that only Marcus could hear the next part clearly. "You don't even have her," he said. That hit not like a punch, like a confirmation. Marcus looked at Emily. She still wasn't looking at him. That was the answer. Not Daniel's words, her silence. Marcus stepped back slightly, not retreating, just accepting. But Daniel wasn't done. "You know what I think," he said, raising his voice just enough for others to hear. "I think you're used to struggling. I think you've convinced yourself it's something noble." A few people nearby glanced over now. The tension was visible. Marcus stayed still, his face calm, but his eyes sharper now. "But it's not," Daniel continued. "It's just small." That word again, small. Marcus felt it. Not in his chest, in his spine, straightening, not breaking, straightening. Emily finally spoke. "Daniel, that's enough," she said softly. But it wasn't strong. It wasn't firm. It didn't stop anything. Daniel glanced at her, then back at Marcus. "I'm just being honest," he said. Marcus nodded once. "You are," he replied. Then he looked at Emily again. "And you agree with him?" It wasn't a question. Emily hesitated. "Just long enough, Marcus. She started, but she didn't finish. She didn't need to." Marcus nodded. "Got it," he said. He took a step back, then another. The space between them widened. The noise around them returned slowly. Conversations, movement, life continuing like nothing had happened. But for Marcus, everything had shifted. Not because of the words, but because of where they came from, and who didn't stop them. He turned, started walking again this time. He didn't stop. Not when Daniel said something else under his breath. Not when he heard a faint laugh from someone who didn't even know him. Not when the weight of 5 years pressed down on him all at once. He just walked, because sometimes the only way to keep your dignity is to carry it out of the place where it's being tested. And as he moved further away, one thought settled in his mind, clearer than anything else. They thought he was nothing. They believed it. They said it out loud. And for the first time, Marcus realized the truth he had been holding back wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about deciding whether they even deserved to know it at all. And that decision was coming faster than he expected. Marcus had almost reached the corner when he heard it, not loud, not dramatic, just a voice. "Hey!" He didn't turn right away. He thought it wasn't for him. People called out all the time. None of it had anything to do with him. But then it came again. "Hey, wait!" This time, there was something different in the tone. Not mocking, not curious, just steady. Marcus slowed, then stopped. He turned slightly. A woman was walking toward him. Mid-20s. Simple clothes. No designer labels. No effort to impress, just real. Her hair was tied back loosely, her face calm. But her eyes were sharp, observant. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't frowning either, just looking at him like she had seen something she didn't agree with. Marcus frowned slightly. "You talking to me?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah." She stopped a few steps in front of him, not too close. Not distant either, just enough space to be respectful. "You okay?" she asked. The question caught him off guard, not because of what it was, because of when it came. Marcus looked at her for a second. "I'm fine," he said automatically. The kind of answer people give when they don't want to explain anything. She tilted her head slightly, not convinced. "That didn't look like fine," she said. Marcus almost let out a short laugh, not amused, just surprised. "You saw that?" he asked. She nodded again. "Hard not to," she replied. Then she glanced back briefly toward the cafe. They weren't exactly quiet. Marcus followed her gaze for a second, then looked away. "It's nothing," he said. She didn't argue, didn't push, but she didn't accept it either. "No," she said calmly. "It wasn't nothing." Marcus met her eyes again. This time, he noticed something different. "No judgment, no pity, just clarity. You don't even know me," he said. She shrugged slightly. "I don't need to," she replied. "I saw enough." That made him pause, because most people would have looked at the scene and made a quick decision. Who looked better? Who looked more successful? Who belonged where? But she hadn't done that. Or at least, she hadn't reacted the same way. "So what did you see?" Marcus asked. She answered without hesitation. "I saw a man getting disrespected," she said, "and I saw him not lose control." Marcus didn't expect that. Not from a stranger. Not after everything that had just happened. "That's what you noticed?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah," she said simply. "Most people would have reacted." She paused for a second, then added, "You didn't?" Marcus looked down briefly, then back up. "Didn't feel like it would change anything," he said. She studied him for a moment, not in a curious way, in a thoughtful way, like she was putting something together. "That takes more strength than people think," she said quietly. Marcus didn't respond right away, because for the past 10 minutes, everything he had heard about himself had been the opposite. Small, not enough, nothing. And now suddenly someone was saying something different. Not exaggerated, not emotional, just different. "Or maybe it just means I'm used to it," Marcus replied. She shook her head. "No," she said. "Being used to something and accepting it are not the same thing." That landed. Marcus didn't argue. He just listened, because something about her tone made it hard to dismiss. "Look," she continued, "I don't know what's going on between you and them." She gestured lightly toward the cafe. "But I do know this." She met his eyes again. "The way someone treats you when they think you have nothing, that tells you everything you need to know." Marcus felt that, not as a shock, as confirmation. He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "I figured that out." She gave a small nod, then stepped back slightly. "Good," she said, "because a lot of people don't." There was a short pause. Not awkward, just still. Then Marcus asked, "Why did you stop me?" She thought about it for a second. "Because I hate seeing people walk away from something like that thinking they deserved it," she said. Marcus looked at her carefully. "And you think I don't?" She held his gaze. "I think you are not sure yet," she replied. That was honest. Too honest. Marcus exhaled slowly. He couldn't deny it, not completely. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small card, and handed it to him. "I work 2 blocks from here," she said. "Coffee shop, day shift." Marcus looked at the card. "Simple, just a name and a number. Lena Brooks, I'm not trying to sell you anything," she added with a small smile. "Just if you ever feel like talking to someone who doesn't already have an opinion about you." Marcus looked at her, then at the card again, then back at her. "You always stop strangers like this?" he asked. She smiled slightly. "Only the ones who don't deserve what just happened," she said. Marcus didn't smile, but something in his expression softened, just a little. "Thanks," he said quietly. She nodded once. "Take care of yourself," she replied. Then she turned and walked away. No drama, no expectation, just leaving. Marcus stood there for a moment longer, the card still in his hand. The noise from the cafe behind him faded into the background, and for the first time since everything happened, the weight on his chest shifted. Not gone, but lighter. Because now there was something else there. Not hope, not yet, just perspective. And sometimes that's where everything starts to change. Marcus stood there a little longer after Lena walked away, her words still sitting quietly in his mind. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like something that didn't need to prove itself to be real. And for the first time since everything happened, he wasn't thinking about Emily or Daniel. He was thinking about something simpler, something more uncomfortable. The way people decide your value before you even speak. The way they look at your clothes, your hands, your silence, and think they already understand your entire life. And that thought followed him as he slowly turned back toward the cafe. Not because he wanted to go back, but because something inside him wasn't finished yet. He walked toward this door, each step measured, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate, like he had already made a decision he hadn't fully explained even to himself. When he pushed the door open, the small bell above it rang softly, and for a moment, the conversations inside continued like nothing had changed, but then a few heads turned. Not all, just enough. Enough for that quiet shift in attention to settle over the room again. Daniel noticed him first, of course he did. People like him always noticed when something they thought was over came back. Emily turned next. Her expression tightened slightly. Not surprised, just uncomfortable. Marcus walked forward, calm, steady, not looking at anyone else, just at the counter. The barista looked at him. "What can I get you?" she asked. Marcus glanced at the menu briefly, even though he already knew what he was going to say. "Black coffee," he replied. "Simple. No extras." The barista nodded. "That'll be $3.50. Marcus reached into his pocket slowly. His fingers brushed past the small, folded bills, then stopped. Because something else was there. The card. The one his father had tried to give him. The one he had refused. But at some point, without fully deciding to, he had kept it. Not as acceptance, just as something unfinished. He pulled it out. Dark, minimal, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with its weight. He placed it on the counter. The barista picked it up casually, like she had done 1,000 times before. But then she paused. Just for a fraction of a second, her eyes moved across the surface of the card. Then back to Marcus. Then again to the card. It was subtle, but not invisible. Behind him, someone let out a small laugh, not loud, not direct, but close enough. Marcus didn't turn. He didn't need to. He knew exactly what that laugh meant. He had heard it before. Different places, different people. Same message. He stayed where he was, calm, waiting. The barista cleared her throat slightly and ran the card. The machine took a second longer than usual. A quiet pause that felt louder than it should have. Then a soft beep, approved. The receipt printed. She handed the card back to him carefully, not differently, but not the same either. "It'll be ready in a minute," she said. Marcus nodded, took the card, slipped it back into his pocket without looking at it. Behind him, Daniel's voice came again, this time louder. "You serious right now?" Marcus didn't turn. He just stood there, waiting for his coffee like it was the only thing that mattered. Daniel stepped closer. "You're really trying to do this," he said, a small laugh in his voice now. "Man, come on!" Marcus remained still. The barista placed the cup on the counter. "Black coffee," she said softly. Marcus picked it up. Warm, simple, real. He turned slightly, then, not fully facing Daniel. "Just enough. I paid for what I ordered," Marcus said calmly. Daniel shook his head, smiling like he had already decided what this was. "Yeah, with what?" he replied. "A stolen card that got a reaction. Not from Marcus, from the room. Small shifts, quiet murmurs. People looking now. Really looking." Marcus held the cup in his hand. "Steady." "It's mine," he said. "No explanation, no defense. Just that." Daniel laughed again, louder this time. Right, he said, because that makes sense. Emily stepped forward slightly. Daniel, stop, she said. But again, it wasn't firm. It wasn't enough. Daniel ignored her. His attention stayed on Marcus. You think people are stupid? He asked. Marcus looked at him fully now. Not angry, not intimidated. Just present. No, Marcus said quietly. I think people see what they expect to see. That line landed, not loudly, but clearly. Daniel's smile tightened. Yeah, he said. And right now I see a guy trying too hard to be something he's not. Marcus didn't respond, because at that moment he understood something clearly. It didn't matter what he said, not yet, not here. Because this wasn't about truth, it was about perception. And perception doesn't change with explanations. It changes with moments. He took a slow sip of his coffee, then set the cup down on the nearest table. Not because he didn't want it, because he didn't need it anymore. He looked at Daniel one last time, then at Emily. Not angry, not broken. Just clear. Then he turned and walked toward the door again. This time, no one laughed, no one spoke, because something had shifted, not fully understood but felt. And as Marcus stepped back out into the street, the weight of everything behind him didn't disappear. But it changed. Because now the line between what people believed about him and who he actually was had never been thinner. And the next moment was going to decide which side of that line the truth finally stood on. Marcus had just stepped onto the sidewalk when the cafe door flew open behind him. Not the soft sound of someone leaving, the hard sound of someone chasing a moment that refused to end. He stopped before he turned. Then Daniel's voice came, sharp and loud. Hey, you're not walking away from this. Marcus turned slowly. The streetlight caught one side of his face. Daniel stood there with his phone already in his hand, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, looking desperate. Emily came out behind him, slower, uneasy, her eyes moving between them like she already knew this was becoming ugly. Daniel pointed toward Marcus's pocket. That card, he said. You think nobody noticed that? Marcus said nothing at first. He just looked at him. Calm, steady. Daniel stepped closer. You really thought you could pull out a card like that in front of people and nobody would question it? His voice carried far enough to pull attention from the tables near the window. A couple turned. A man by the door paused mid-sip. The same thing was happening again. Eyes, assumptions, judgment building faster than facts. Emily lowered her voice. Daniel let it go. But there was no force in it. She sounded uncomfortable, not protective. Daniel ignored her. No, he said, this isn't small. Then he looked Marcus straight in the eye and said it plainly. That card isn't yours. Marcus's expression barely changed. You saying I stole it? He asked. Daniel gave a short laugh. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. The air changed after that. Once accusation becomes public, people stop watching like bystanders and start watching like witnesses. Marcus could feel it. The quiet shift. The extra space people leave around a man they suddenly think might be dangerous. Emily looked at Marcus now, searching his face for something. Fear? Guilt? Panic. He gave her none of it. He stood there with the same posture he had carried through every insult that night. Not proud, just steady. Daniel lifted his phone. I'm calling the police. Emily looked at him sharply. Daniel, seriously? He answered without taking his eyes off Marcus. What do you want me to do? Ignore fraud. Then louder, for the people still listening, he added, guys like this always think they can bluff their way into places they don't belong. Marcus looked at him carefully. This isn't about the card, he said. Daniel frowned. Oh, it's exactly about the card. Marcus shook his head once. No, it's about what you decided the moment you saw me holding it. That landed harder than Daniel expected. Not because it proved anything, because it named something ugly. Daniel's mouth tightened. A construction worker doesn't carry a card like that, he snapped. Marcus answered quietly. That's what you believe. Emily stepped forward half a pace. Marcus, just explain. He turned his eyes toward her. Would it matter? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Daniel was already dialing. "Good," he muttered. "Let's clear it up." Marcus stayed still. He could hear the call connect. Daniel spoke fast, certain. "Yes, I need an officer here. Possible stolen financial card. The man is still outside." "Yes, right now." He gave the address, ended the call, and slid the phone back into his pocket. "There," he said. "Let's see how calm you are when they get here." Marcus held his gaze. "I'll be the same?" That answer unsettled Daniel more than shouting ever could have. Emily folded her arms tightly, not from cold, but from the feeling that the ground under the situation was no longer stable. Marcus looked at her one more time. "You really believe this about me?" he asked. Emily hesitated. "I don't know what to believe," she said. Marcus nodded slowly. "That's the problem," he replied. "You believed the worst before you asked the truth." Nobody spoke after that. Street noise moved around them. Tires passed over wet pavement. A siren sounded far away, then came again. Closer this time. Daniel straightened when he heard it. Emily looked toward the road. Marcus did not move at all, because by then he understood this was no longer about proving innocence. It was about something deeper, about how quickly people decide guilt when a man's clothes look cheaper than the thing in his hand, about how respect disappears the moment status is questioned. The siren grew louder. Blue light brushed the end of the block. Daniel lifted his chin. Ready. Emily held her breath. Marcus stood under the streetlight, still calm, still unreadable. And one truth settled over the moment with quiet force. In the next few minutes, everyone there would be forced to face the distance between what they assumed he was and who he actually was. And once that distance opened, nothing between them would ever look the same again. The sirens got louder, not fast, not dramatic, just steady, the kind of sound that makes people straighten without realizing it. Daniel lifted his chin slightly. You could see it in his face. Relief, control returning. Emily shifted beside him. Her hands tightened against her arms. Marcus didn't move. He stood exactly where he was. Same posture, same calm. Like nothing had changed. But everything was about to. The police car turned the corner and slowed. Blue lights brushed across the street, reflected in the cafe window, across Daniel's face, across Emily's eyes. Then it stopped. 2 officers stepped out, not rushed, not aggressive, just doing their job. One of them looked around, took in the scene quickly. "We got a call about fraud," he said. His tone was neutral. Not accusing, not friendly, just professional. Daniel stepped forward immediately. "Yeah, that's him," he said, pointing at Marcus. No hesitation, no doubt. Like the conclusion had already been written in his head, the officer looked at Marcus, up and down. Work boots, simple clothes, tired face. Then he looked back at Daniel. "What exactly happened?" he asked. Daniel spoke fast, confident again. He came into the cafe, tried to pay with a card that clearly isn't his. When I questioned him, he refused to explain. He kept his voice controlled, clean, like he knew how to sound believable. Emily stood beside him, silent, not confirming, not denying, just there. The officer turned to Marcus. "Sir, can you show me the card?" Marcus nodded once. No argument, no hesitation. He reached into his pocket slowly and pulled it out. The same card. Dark, minimal, heavy. He handed it over without a word. The officer took it, looked at it briefly, then passed it to his partner. The second officer studied it longer, not with confusion, with recognition. Something shifted in his expression. Small, but real. He looked at Marcus again, more carefully now. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Marcus answered simply. "It's mine." Daniel let out a short laugh behind them. "Of course it is," he muttered. The first officer shot him a quick look, enough to say, "Stay quiet." The second officer stepped aside slightly, pulled out his radio, spoke in low, quick sentences, not loud enough for everyone to hear, but enough for tension to stretch. Seconds passed. then more. Daniel crossed his arms, waiting, confident. Emily's eyes moved between Marcus and the officers. Something in her expression had changed. Not trust, not yet, just uncertainty. Then something else happened. A black sedan pulled up behind the police car. Clean, polished, out of place on that street. The kind of car that doesn't arrive by accident. The driver stepped out first, opened the back door. A woman stepped out, mid-30s, sharp suit, calm presence. She didn't rush, she didn't look around. She walked straight toward the officers. Daniel frowned. "What is this?" he muttered. The second officer turned as she approached. His posture changed immediately. "Ma'am," he said. "Respect, clear, instant." She gave a small nod. Then her eyes moved to Marcus, just for a second, enough to confirm, then back to the officer. "We received a verification request," she said. Her voice was calm, precise. "I'm here to confirm ownership." The air shifted, not loudly, but completely. Daniel straightened. "Wait, who are you?" he asked. She didn't look at him right away. Instead, she took the card from the officer's hand, held it lightly, like it belonged exactly where it was. Then she answered, "Sophia Grant, Executive Verification Officer, Reed Financial Group." That name meant nothing to most people there. But the tone didn't. Authority carries itself. She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Reed," she said. "Not a question? A confirmation?" Marcus nodded once. "Yes." Daniel blinked. Just once. Small, but enough. "Hold on," he said, his voice losing its edge. "You're telling me this is real?" Sophia looked at him now. Calm, direct. "Not only real," she said, "but restricted. This card is linked to primary executive access accounts. There are less than 20 of these in circulation." Silence. Real silence this time. Emily's breath caught slightly. She looked at Marcus again. Really looked this time. Not at his clothes. At him. Daniel shook his head. "That doesn't make sense," he said. But it wasn't strong anymore. Sophia handed the card back to Marcus. Carefully. Respectfully. "Apologies for the inconvenience, sir," she said. Then she turned to the officers. "There's no issue here." The first officer nodded. The tension left his posture. Understood. Then he looked at Marcus. "Sorry about that." Marcus gave a small nod. "It's fine." Daniel didn't speak. Couldn't. His confidence had nowhere to stand now. Emily's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Marcus looked at both of them. Not angry, not proud, just clear. Because now the truth wasn't hidden anymore. And the moment they had built their judgment on had just collapsed beneath them. And what came next would hit even harder than the reveal itself. No one spoke for a moment after Sophia handed the card back. Not because they had nothing to say, because everything they thought they knew had just cracked. You could feel it in the air. That shift, that quiet collapse of certainty, Daniel was the first to react. But even he didn't sound like himself anymore. "This doesn't make sense," he said, shaking his head. His voice lower now, uncertain, like he was trying to hold on to something that was already slipping through his fingers. Sophia didn't respond immediately. She adjusted her sleeve calmly, then looked at Marcus again. Not with surprise, not with curiosity, but with recognition, Mr. Reed, she said clearly, her voice carrying just enough for everyone nearby to hear. "We've been trying to reach you." That sentence alone changed everything. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. Marcus didn't react the way people expected. No smile, no pride, just a small nod. "I know," he replied. That was it. Simple, controlled, real. Emily's eyes widened slightly, not fully understanding yet, but enough to feel the ground shifting under her. Daniel frowned. "Reach him for what?" he asked, his tone trying to sound firm again, but it wasn't landing the same way. Sophia turned toward him slowly, her expression calm but firm. The kind of calm that doesn't argue because it doesn't need to, because he is the primary beneficiary of Reed Financial Group, she said. A pause. just long enough for the words to sink in. And the appointed successor to Chairman William Reed, silence followed. Real silence. No movement, no whispers, just the weight of what had been said settling over everyone at once. Emily took a small step back, almost unconsciously, her eyes locked onto Marcus now, not scanning, not judging, but searching, like she was trying to reconcile two completely different versions of the same man. Daniel blinked. Once, then again. That's not possible, he said, but the words came out weaker than he intended, because deep down, he already felt it, that uncomfortable truth pressing in. Sophia didn't argue, she simply continued. Mr. Marcus Reed has full access authority and ownership rights pending formal transition, she said. Everything connected to this account is legally and personally his. The crowd that had gathered slightly around them didn't react loudly, but their posture changed. You could see it. The distance they had kept from Marcus began to close, just a little. The suspicion in their eyes softened into something else, curiosity, respect, maybe even a little discomfort, because people don't like realizing they judged too quickly. Marcus stood there through all of it, still the same clothes, same posture, same quiet presence. Nothing about him had changed. And yet everything around him had. Daniel looked at him again, really looked this time, not at the surface, at the reality standing in front of him. You're telling me. You're that guy, he said, the words stumbling slightly. Marcus held his gaze. Calm. No, he said quietly. I'm the same guy I was 10 minutes ago. That hit harder than anything else because it stripped away the illusion completely. Emily's lips parted slightly. Marcus, why didn't you say anything? She asked, her voice softer now, almost careful. Like she was afraid of the answer. Marcus looked at her for a second, not long, just enough. Would it have changed what you said? He asked. She didn't answer. She couldn't, because they both knew the truth. And that truth wasn't about money. It was about timing, about choices, about what she had already decided when she thought he was just a man with nothing. Sophia stepped back slightly, giving space, but her presence still anchored the moment. The officers stood more relaxed now. No tension, no suspicion, just a situation that had already resolved itself without needing further action. Daniel let out a slow breath. His shoulders dropped, not dramatically, just enough to show the shift. I didn't know, he said, but it sounded more like an excuse than a statement. Marcus nodded once. Exactly, he replied. No anger, no bitterness, just truth around them. The energy had completely changed. People who had been watching with suspicion now watched with interest, some with respect, some with discomfort, because now the story had flipped and everyone knew it. But Marcus didn't lean into it. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene. He just stood there, exactly the same man he had been before the reveal. And that was what made the moment land so deeply, because real value doesn't need to announce itself. It just is. Emily looked at him one more time. This time not as someone she was leaving behind, but as someone she had misunderstood completely. And that realization came too late. Marcus turned slightly, then. Not to walk away yet, just to shift his weight. To move the moment forward without dragging it. Because he understood something now very clearly. The truth had done its job. It had exposed everything that needed to be seen. And what came next wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about choosing what mattered. And as the crowd slowly began to settle, as the noise of the street returned, as the weight of the moment lingered in the air just a little longer, one thing became undeniable. Respect is not something you gain when people discover your status. It is something they either give you when you have nothing, or reveal they never had for you at all. And that lesson was about to cost some people far more than they expected. No one rushed to speak after the truth came out, not because there was nothing to say, but because everything had already been said in the worst possible way. You could feel it, that quiet shift in the air, The kind that changes how people stand, how they look at each other, how they rethink what they just witnessed. Daniel tried to recover first. He let out a breath, forced a small laugh, and straightened his jacket like he could put himself back together with a simple gesture. "Okay, so what?" he said. But his voice didn't carry the same confidence anymore. "That doesn't change anything," but it did. Everyone there knew it. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Daniel was already losing ground without being pushed. He glanced around, noticing the way people were looking at him now. Not impressed, not agreeing, just questioning. That was new for him. He wasn't used to being on that side of the moment. "You think this makes you better than everyone," Daniel added. But it sounded weak, like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Marcus finally spoke. "No," he said calmly. "It just proves you were wrong. That hit clean, direct, no emotion behind it, and that made it heavier." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I wasn't wrong," he replied quickly. "I made a decision based on what I saw." Marcus nodded once. "Exactly," he said. "You decided without knowing." That line spread beyond Daniel. It landed on everyone who had watched silently. Emily felt it too. She looked down for a second, then back at Marcus, her expression no longer certain. Daniel shifted his weight. His posture wasn't the same anymore. He looked at Emily, searching for support. "Emily, this doesn't change anything between us," he said. But this time it sounded like a question instead of a statement. Emily didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on Marcus. That silence said everything Daniel didn't want to hear. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked Marcus softly. Not angry, not defensive, just shaken. Marcus looked at her for a moment, then answered, "Because I needed to see what you would choose without it." That truth didn't raise his voice, but it broke something in her expression. Emily swallowed slowly, because now she understood. Not just what he had hidden, but why. And that made it worse. Daniel shook his head. "This is ridiculous," he said, trying again. But his voice lacked strength. "We're acting like this changes who he is." Marcus met his eyes. "It doesn't," he said. "That's the point." Silence followed again. This time heavier, because there was nothing left to argue. Daniel exhaled slowly. His shoulders dropped slightly. "Look, I didn't know," he said. "But it sounded like an excuse now." Marcus nodded. "I know," he replied. And that was it. No anger, no need to push further. And somehow that made Daniel look smaller than if Marcus had attacked him. Because now the truth stood on its own, without noise, without force. Emily finally looked at Daniel, really looked at him. And something in her expression changed. Not admiration, not comfort, just doubt. "You didn't even ask him," she said quietly. "You just assumed." Daniel didn't respond, because he couldn't, because she was right. And everyone there could see it now. The confidence he had earlier wasn't built on truth. It was built on assumption. And once that broke, there was nothing underneath to hold it up. The small crowd that had gathered began to lose interest, not loudly, just slowly, because the tension was gone. The outcome was clear. Marcus took a small step back, not to escape, just to create distance, because he understood something now. This moment wasn't about winning. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about seeing people clearly. He looked at Emily one last time. Calm. No anger, no bitterness, just clarity. Then he spoke. "You didn't lose me because I was poor," he said quietly. "You lost me because you decided I wasn't worth believing in." That stayed in the air. Heavy. Final. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't, because she knew it was true. Daniel looked away for the first time. And that silence confirmed everything. Marcus turned then, ready to leave, not because he had nothing left to say, but because he had already said what mattered. And as he took that first step forward, away from both of them, one truth settled in quietly. Some people don't lose opportunities because they lack options. They lose them because they fail to recognize value when it stands right in front of them. And by the time they finally understand what they walked away from, it's already too late. Marcus did not look back. Not when the silence settled behind him. Not when Emily failed to call his name. Not when Daniel had nothing left to say. He just walked. Slow, steady. The way a man walks when he has finally stopped carrying what was never his to begin with. The street felt different now. Not quieter, not kinder, just clearer. For the first time that night, the noise around him did not press against his chest. It passed by him. He reached the corner and stopped for a second, not because he was lost, but because he finally knew where he wanted to go. Then he turned and headed down the same street Lena had taken earlier. It was not a dramatic decision. Not romantic, not even fully conscious. It just felt simple, honest, like the first honest thing he had done for himself all evening. The coffee shop was still open. Warm light spilled onto the sidewalk, the kind of light that did not promise anything grand. Only rest. Marcus pushed the door open. The bell gave a soft sound. Lena was behind the counter, wiping down the espresso machine. She looked up, saw him, and gave the smallest nod. No surprise, no performance, just recognition. Hey, she said. Marcus nodded back. Hey, that was enough. No awkward explaining. No need to retell the whole disaster outside. She studied his face for half a second and asked, You want coffee? Or you want somewhere quiet to stand for a minute? Marcus almost smiled, maybe both. She gave a small, knowing look, black again. He nodded. Yeah. She turned and started making it. Marcus stood by the counter with his hands in his pockets. He watched the small movements of the place. Cups stacked neatly, sugar packets lined up in a glass jar, a low hum from the refrigerator near the back. Nothing expensive, nothing impressive, but everything had its place. He realized that was what calmed him. Not luxury, order, simplicity. The kind of room where no one asked you to be more than who you already were. Lena set the cup down in front of him. Here, Marcus picked it up and wrapped both hands around it. The heat settled into his palms. Thanks. She leaned one elbow lightly against the counter. You look like you've been hit by 3 different conversations, and none of them ended well. This time Marcus did smile, but only briefly. That sounds about right, she nodded. Yeah, I figured. A quiet settled between them. Not awkward, just open. Marcus took a sip and let out a slow breath. You were right, he said. Lena tilted her head. About what? He looked at the dark coffee before answering. About how people treat you when they think you have nothing. She did not react dramatically. She just said, Most people tell on themselves faster than they realize. Marcus nodded. I guess I kept hoping some people wouldn't. Lena looked at him carefully, then. Hope isn't stupid, she said. It just hurts when you place it in the wrong hands. That line stayed with him, because it was not soft. It was not cruel either, just true. And truth, spoken without ego, has a way of reaching deeper. Marcus looked up at her. Why didn't you treat me like they did? Lena gave a small shrug. Because I've been looked at that way before. He waited. She continued. You work hard. You keep to yourself. You don't explain your whole life to strangers. People see that and fill in the blanks with whatever makes them feel superior. Marcus watched her for a moment. And you don't? She shook her head. No, I learned a long time ago that being broke and being small are not the same thing. That one landed hard, not because it was dramatic, because it named something he had been feeling his whole life without saying out loud. He took another sip. I don't really know what happens next, he admitted. That felt strange coming out of his mouth. He was not a man who confessed uncertainty easily. Lena did not rush to comfort him. She did not give him a speech. She simply said, Then don't decide tonight. Marcus looked at her. That easy. She smiled faintly. No, just that necessary. Then she added, People make bad choices when they try to solve their whole life in one painful evening. He let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. That sounds specific. It is, she said. And for the first time, there was something personal in her tone, something she chose not to explain. He respected that. Maybe because he understood it, the minutes passed without pressure. They talked a little more. Nothing grand. She told him she usually worked late, because the evening shift was quieter, and she liked quiet. He told her he liked early mornings for the same reason. She said she lived with her aunt while saving money to finish a certification program. He said he understood saving for something that felt far away. Neither of them tried to impress the other. That was what made it feel rare. Their words stayed close to the ground, honest, useful, human. When Marcus finally put the empty cup down, something in him had changed. Not healed, not resolved, just steadied. He reached into his pocket for cash. Lena shook her head. "This one's on me." Marcus frowned lightly. "I can pay, I know," she said. "That's not why." He looked at her, understood what she meant, and nodded once. "Okay." Then he stood there for one last second, as if he didn't want to ruin the simplicity of the moment by saying too much. "I'll come back," he said. Lena gave a small smile. Then come back. No flirtation, no promise, just room, just possibility. Marcus turned toward the door and stepped out into the night. This time, he was not walking away from humiliation. He was walking away with clarity. And sometimes that is how real things begin. Not with fireworks, not with rescue, just with one quiet person seeing you clearly before the world has any reason to. Marcus did not rush into anything after that night. Not into revenge, not into proving a point, not into becoming the version of himself people suddenly expected him to be. He went back to work the next morning. Same boots, same site, same routine, dust on his hands, sweat on his back, because that was still his life. And more importantly, it was still his choice. The difference was not in what he had, it was in what he understood. He no longer worked to prove himself to anyone. He worked because he respected the process that built him. Days passed, then weeks. Word about him spread quietly in places he never visited. Boardrooms, offices. People who had never met him were now discussing his name. But Marcus did not chase that world. He let it come to him slowly, on his terms. He met his father again, not as a son trying to earn approval, not as a man asking for something, just as someone willing to talk. They didn't fix everything overnight. Real damage does not disappear like that. But they started, and that mattered. Marcus accepted responsibility for what was his, not the wealth, not the title, but the ability to choose how it would be used. He did not move into a mansion. He did not change his lifestyle overnight. He kept his apartment. He kept his routine, because he understood something most people never do. Money changes your options, but it should not change your values. Emily tried to reach out, more than once. Messages, calls, even showing up once. Marcus listened. Calm, respectful. But he did not go back, not because he hated her, but because he understood her. And once you truly understand someone's choices, you cannot pretend they mean something else. He wished her well, and let her go. That was the cleanest ending he could give both of them. Daniel disappeared from the story the same way he entered it, loud at first, then irrelevant. Then, because people like him only stand strong when the ground is already built for them. When that ground shifts, so do they. Marcus kept going back to Lena's coffee shop. Not every day, not in a rush, just naturally. They talked about work, about life, about small things that did not need to be impressive to matter. She never treated him differently after learning the truth, and that was exactly why he kept showing up. There was no performance between them, no pressure, just honesty. And slowly, something real began to take shape. Not fast, not forced. Built the same way Marcus built everything in his life, one steady step at a time. He eventually stepped into his role at the bank, but he did it differently. He spent time on the ground first, learning, listening, understanding how decisions at the top affected people at the bottom. Because he had been there, he knew what it meant to count money for rent, to skip meals, to work without recognition. And he made sure that reality was never invisible to him again. He did not announce himself as a powerful man. He became a responsible one. In the end, Marcus did not win because he was rich. He won because he never stopped being the man he was when he had nothing. And that is the part people often miss. Respect is not something you deserve when you succeed. It is something you reveal when you have no reason to expect it. Some people will only value you when they discover what you have. Others will value you because of who you are. Learn to see the difference early. It will save you years of building your life around the wrong people. And sometimes, losing someone is not a failure. It is the moment you finally stop investing in a future that was never truly yours to begin with.